back to another episode of Jalen's Jumpstart. It's officially season 2 of the show, and as promised, I decided to add some flavor, such as having in-person interviews. Today's guest is Emmy Award-winning anchor of WUSA 9, Commanders kickoff host, author, podcaster, former Fox 5 morning news anchor, creating a household name for himself here in the district. He's covered news and sports in numerous places, such as Jackson, Mississippi, Fresno, California, North Carolina, Nashville, and Atlanta. He is a Jackson State graduate, husband, father, mentor, and friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Wisdom Martin. Wisdom, my man, how's it
What's
going?
up, man?
Good
How
to
you
see
doing?
you. Good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, of course.
Proud of everything you're doing.
Yeah.
Young man, up and coming. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when I go through that list of all your accomplishments, all
Right.
you have done throughout your career, what speaks to you the most?
The fact that longevity,
Mhm.
because when I first started out in the business, it was challenging. It always is when you first start a new career and you're trying to learn your way. So it's a bit challenging trying to navigate situations, trying to navigate people,
Mhm.
coworkers, management, trying to figure out what's the right way to do things, what should you not do, getting comfortable on camera and doing all those things at the beginning, stumbling and falling several times along the way, and then finally figuring it out at some point, and then being able to be here in Washington, D.C. for the last 22 years. That's what sticks out to me is because a lot of people they see the finished product.
Yep.
And that's with any career. They'll see, oh, this is the pinnacle or the level of success, but they don't see the struggle. They don't see the journey. So that's what sticks out to me the most is the journey, the ups and downs, and the times that you almost go in another direction, and then you stick it out, and then eventually you get rewarded because it's something that you love.
Yeah, as a what I like to say as a baby to this business, I'm learning that we have to sacrifice so much,
Yes.
just to do more and just to be outstanding,
Right.
just to really excel in our career.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't really understand the sacrifice.
Right.
People just think you just stand in front of a camera and read off of
And
a
look good,
teleprompter
right?
and to look good. No, there's a lot you have to invest
Right.
in time, in yourself as well, and
Right.
into how you look at and things like that.
Yeah, and that's important too because you're right. A lot of people think it's easy because it's just TV. You show up, you pop on TV, and then you go home.
It's way more than
It's
that.
way more than
Way
that.
more.
We're talking, and it's not just calling the words on the prompter. It's a lot that goes into this. Like I was telling you about when you're dealing with other people, you got to have chemistry with the people that you work with. You have to be able to deal with management. You have to be able to figure out certain situations. When the prompter is not there, breaking news or otherwise, what are you going to do? So those are the things that you learn along the way. Because when I first started out, obviously my focus was on, I'm going to read this prompter. And every word they put on this prompter, like Ron Burgundy, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call all these words, and that's the only thing I'm focused on. So if you deviated from that, I was lost.
Mhm.
So over time, you get used to doing that, and you start thinking, okay, what am I going to, you become more seasoned. You start thinking, okay, when that prompter is not working, I got to be ready. Because at any point, anything could happen. Breaking news. I got to be ready, and I got to study my environment. So it's a lot to this. There's many different layers and levels, and people just don't see that. And not to mention, working on the weekends, working overnights, working on holidays.
Yes, I know.
All those different things.
It's part of paying your dues.
It's part of paying your dues.
One of the things that the anchors tell me where I work is you have to tell the story.
Right.
Don't just read off of the prompter.
Right.
You're going to sound like a robot doing that.
Right.
Picture the audience that you want right in front of that prompter.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And the important thing is you have to be able to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can call words, but think about any good news person or sports person or commentator that you enjoy watching.
Yes.
It's because they're not just calling the words. They're not just reading the prompter. It's something about them that says, I am comfortable. I am going to tell you this story. I am going to tell you these facts. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's certain about the way that you do things. It's a certain way that you do things that people are like, oh, okay, I can deal with this guy, and they don't turn the channel.
Yeah.
At least not initially.
Mm-hmm.
But that's important too, is to be able to connect with the audience. Mm-hmm. And a great way to do that is with knowledge. Every time I step into a situation, I like to over prepare. So if we're talking about the inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just going to prepare for the inauguration that I'm here and that I'm in, because I've done a bunch of them. I've done Bush, both Obamas, Trump, Biden, and now I'm about to do Trump again. I even did, I did the Bush before that too. But always getting ready.
Yes.
So it wasn't just about, okay, here's what's happening today. I'm coming with historical context. Here, since I've been here a long time, I can talk about the other inaugurations. I can talk about the ones that I haven't been at, and even the historical perspectives about the people that are running, the people that ran, what happened in it. So all of those things, knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge, and this is across the board. Again, it doesn't matter whether you're doing sports, news, or weather. Knowledge is very important. It shows that you are paying attention. It shows that you have done your homework and your research, and people do appreciate that.
Yes, homework is key.
Yes.
Now, kind of stemming from that, where does your passion from storytelling really stem from?
I've always just enjoyed the journey of telling the story and sitting down, and it's just like we're having a conversation right now. That's what I love about it, because a lot of times when I go into a story to do an interview, I'm in there to get the story, but I learn so much from the people that I talk to. There's so much that comes out of that, and a lot of it doesn't make air because in a news hole it's just a few minutes here, a few minutes there. But I learned so much from these people about their lives, about their journey, while we're even there talking to them. For me, that's an education. So I feel like I'm going to a real life class where I'm getting education on the spot,
so
and I'm learning on the spot.
Education process.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Now, obviously, sports is a big deal in your family. I know your kids, they do a lot of sports. They do track and field.
Right.
Was it volleyball or something else?
My youngest daughter does volleyball.
Okay.
My son plays basketball, and my oldest daughter runs track at Tuskegee and cross country at Tuskegee.
Nice.
So she's all conference. Yeah, she got that from me, not from my wife, because it's my DNA. It's my DNA. My DNA. I'm claiming that. Yeah.
She got the good genes. So when you're talking about sports, I know you and Chick do your thing with the Commanders kickoff.
Right.
What's that really like? Is that only in the studio? I saw you guys at Ashburn at the Commanders training camp. Like, how do you determine what's important to talk about?
So the format is Chick is always with the team. If they're at home, he's at the stadium, Northwest Stadium. If they're on the road, he's wherever they are. Okay. So in the studio, it's me and Sean Springs, former Commanders football player, played with the Seahawks as well, went to Ohio State. So we're in studio and we do the back and forth. So what happens is we briefly mention what has already happened the week before, that the team either won or lost, and talk about some of the highlights of that. And then we move forward to here's what we're looking forward to today. There's buying or selling, where we ask the audience, do you think this will happen, or do you think this will happen? Then we have Sean Springs does his keys to the game, how he thinks that what the most important parts of the game are that will be in favor of the Commanders, and how they need to what they need to do to turn the tide. It's only 30 minutes, so it's quick. It's really quick. I mean, when you sit up there and sit down and start talking, and then Chick starts going, and then Sean starts going, and then if Chick has a guest, it's a wrap. Next thing you know, show's over. But so that's how the format goes, and it's fun right now because the team is winning and it's a different environment. So that's how it goes.
And since we're on the topic of football, I want to talk about your novel here, Pass Interference.
Right.
What should readers really expect from this book? Like, what's the big message of Pass Interference?
I talked a lot about the journey. That's what this book is about. It's about the journey of the black quarterback throughout history, because initially back, it goes all the way back to the 50s. I interviewed players that played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the different eras up to now. And they talked about the struggle, and it's about leadership. Not just, it was bigger than football, because quarterback is the most important position in football. That was basically the face of the team and the leadership position on the team.
Right.
And how initially when the league started, they didn't want people that looked like me and you out there on the field to be the quarterback. They didn't want that. There was a time period that ran right up beside the baseball where they refused to integrate. Same thing in foot. It was kind of the same thing in football. But the quarterback position was slow to develop because they just did not, number one, and it's in the book too, the players were saying how they didn't believe in them. They didn't think they were smart enough. They didn't think they had the leadership qualities. They just didn't. And immediately when they saw the skin color, they were like, nope.
It was about, I think another thing is, it was about trust.
Yes.
Quarterback is a very important position, probably the most important on the field.
Right.
And so historically, it's always been our white counterparts who has kind of ruled out that position.
Right.
And so,
and the issue was that you've had quarterbacks throughout history that have been very successful in college.
Yes.
But when it came to getting in the pros, initially 60s and 70s, for the most part, they were ignored. We're talking about all the way up until Doug Williams, at one point in the late 70s going into the 80s, Doug Williams and Vince Evans were the only two starting quarterbacks in the entire league. Doug was with Tampa Bay at the time. Vince Evans was with Chicago at the time. And they're both in this book and talked about their journeys and their struggles. Then Doug Williams won the Super Bowl with the Washington Commanders back in the day, back in the 80s. There wasn't another black quarterback to win the Super Bowl until Russell Wilson. And I'll never forget that night, watching Doug Williams do that, MVP. Dan Dierdorf was commentating in that game. And he said, I hope this puts to rest all the stereotypes about the black quarterback not being able to lead a team to the championship.
What were the emotions like?
It was unreal. It was like at the time, it felt like this is unbelievable. This is a groundbreaking moment. This is a life-changing moment for sports and leadership. But in reality, it wasn't. Because Doug won the Super Bowl, was the MVP, played a couple of games the next year, and then on the bench, Washington continued to have success. But Doug didn't play for anybody else. And there was all kind of reasons. They said health and age, but they were getting other quarterbacks who were less than Doug, who were not as healthy as Doug, and they were older than Doug, and they were giving him opportunities. And that's the struggle that's highlighted in this book. Because, again, you would have the success, and then all of a sudden, somebody that was inferior to you skill-wise would be getting opportunities. There's a story in here about how there's a guy named Dominic Pearson. He came out of Syracuse.
Nice. Okay.
He played the same time period that Troy Aikman played. Dominic Pearson was a beast on the football field. Heisman Trophy candidate, amazing football player. And in some aspects, he was better than Troy Aikman because he was in the national spotlight. But when it came to time to get drafted, they came up with all these excuses about the offense that he was running at Syracuse and about his height and all kinds of these different excuses about why he wasn't good enough to be a top draft pick. So Troy Aikman gets picked up by Dallas right out of the gates. And then Don McPherson gets picked up, like, I can't remember the round, but it was in the later rounds. Barely got on with Philadelphia. Then eventually got traded to Houston and replaced by some other quarterbacks that were not as good. And he finally ended up in Canada. He was like, this is ridiculous. And those are the stories you're gonna read about in this book, about how these quarterbacks were so successful and so good, waiting for the opportunity, and they never got it. Totally different ballgame right now in these days, because you got Patrick Mahomes and everybody in the world playing right now. Lamar Jackson is doing amazing things. Jalen Hurts doing amazing
and now
things.
Jaden Daniels.
And Jaden Daniels. So it's a totally different ballgame now. But back then, we weren't getting those opportunities. We weren't getting those opportunities. I'm talking 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s. We were not getting like the opportunities that we're getting now. Because when we get these opportunities, when we were given the chance, you see what's happening. You see the Jaden Daniels of the world. You see the shift. You say, okay, and you see the Lamar Jackson got 2 MVPs and maybe a third. So when you get there, when the doors are open, and that's all thanks to Doug and George Telefero and Willie Thrower and all those guys from back in the day, Vince Evans, Marlon Briscoe, James Harris, all these people who opened the doors for the quarterbacks of the day. So that's very important to realize that. And when they read this book, I want them to remember, it wasn't always like this. Somebody opened the door for you guys.
Yes.
And I want you to recognize the past, because you got to learn from the past so you won't repeat the mistakes of the past.
That's incredible wisdom. I really can't wait to read this book. And I missed your book signing.
Okay.
I want to know what was that like? I mean, you had all those supporters in the room. Tell me about that experience. You were hosting it with Sean Yancey, right?
Sean Yancey, yes.
Shout out to Channel 4.
Right. That's my girl. Sean and I go way back. She's been tremendous in supporting me in my career and in my life. It was amazing because some people know the story, and some people don't know the stories, and they're fascinated by the stories that are in this book and about the journey, because they're familiar with how racism works and how discrimination works. And you can deny it all you want or say it's not a real thing, but it did happen. So for me, being able to sit there and tell those stories and have the people ask questions about it, it was tremendous. Okay. I loved it.
Sean Taylor, what was it like covering that story?
It was tough. I'll never forget the day that happened, the morning that happened, actually the morning that it came across on air. I was in the car. I was in Bowie, over by the Chick-fil-A in Bowie, on my way. I don't know. I was working a night shift, but I was on my way somewhere over there, then maybe to the gym or whatever. Okay. And I was listening to the radio. Doc Walker was on the radio, and he's like, Sean Taylor, I forgot who his co-host was, but he was like, Sean Taylor is shot. blah, blah, blah. And he's in Florida. And I'm like, okay, he's shot. He'll go to the hospital. He'll be fine. And then Doc Barker, Sean Taylor's dead. And I'm like, Sean Taylor's dead?
Yeah.
What do you mean Sean Taylor's dead? So I'm
That's
in
a
the
huge
radio.
thing.
I'm shocked because this young man was phenomenal football player, and he was on vacation.
Mhm.
Well, he was off. He was hurt, so he was at his home in Florida. And
Right.
and Doc starts telling the story about what happened, and I was like, what? So then we go down there and start covering the story. It was horrible from a sense of it was so tragic. He was so young, gifted, and talented. Somebody breaks into his house and shoots him, and it hits him in an area in his femoral artery where he bleeds out.
Mhm.
That it was so sad, and to see we covered the funeral, we covered all aspects of it, and to see his family up there, obviously this was very emotional
Yeah.
for them, but to see the impact that this young man had on football and on this team at such a young age for such a short period of time, and to learn that he had passed away in this particular manner, it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible. So yeah.
You've been anchoring in DC since 2003, I
Oh
believe.
my gosh. I've been here since 2003. Yeah, on and off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what about DC really kept you here? Like, what drew you to DC? Like, what do you love about covering
Right.
news and sports in the district? Because I like to call it the LinkedIn city. That's how I think. 'Cause there's always opportunity.
Right.
I want to know from your perspective, like, what do you love about DC so much?
DC is it's so unique and special because you have Washington D.C., the nation's capital,
Mhm.
home of politics, like the power of the universe is
Pretty
right
much.
here in Washington D.C. But not only do you have that, you have Maryland and you have Virginia,
Mhm.
and you have some allies as well, small parts of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. But you have all of that right here, right? And then you have all these different jurisdictions, the local jurisdictions, the park police, and all these different things. So being able to be here and to learn all of that and to develop all that and to be here where you're Smithsonian, where all these museums are
at the
phenomenal.
hall, the National
Oh my
Museum.
gosh! All
When
these
my
museums.
family first moved here, we were all
Oh
over
my
the museum.
gosh! Yeah, you just you can't beat that, and just the lifestyle and the living and I think the diverse. I think there's a lot of diversity here.
There is.
I think there's I think it's phenomenal for young people to be in an environment like this because sometimes when you go outside of Washington D.C., you don't realize it because you're just used to it. And when you go somewhere else, you're like, okay, this ain't like the DMV, Washington
Right.
D.C. and Virginia.
Right.
It's not like that. So that's what's attractive to me is this place is so diverse.
I couldn't
The
agree more.
people
I couldn't
here
agree
are
more.
and they're smart people and they're educated people and they're thriving for the most part financially. I mean, everybody's got issues.
Yeah.
Every city and town has issues, but that's what's tremendous to me is opportunities, the diversity, the education, the people. It's lovely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
Yeah.
growing up in Montgomery County, you
Yeah.
see all sorts of people.
Right.
I mean, my dad loves it here too.
Yeah.
And once I go out
Yeah.
to anywhere
You're like, I
outside
gotta
of
get
DMV,
back.
I'm like, where am I? I don't even see you only see two different
Right.
people.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up here,
Uh-huh.
I want to know like what's something you can tell young rising
Mhm.
professionals like
Right.
myself.
Right.
What's like the biggest piece of advice you can give them? And then maybe what's something you would tell a younger Wisdom Martin?
What I would tell young professionals is come up with a plan. Always have a plan.
Mhm.
Like your goal, your destination, wherever you want to go, have a plan. And it's also important to be able to network and to outwork everybody.
Yes.
You're going to be in a situation where if they say come in at 6 in the afternoon or
You gotta make that
6
quick turnaround.
You got to make a quick turn, whatever it
Yeah.
is. I always say, okay, if they say come in at 6, I'm going to be there at 5:30. I never want to be late. And I always want to outwork everybody.
Yes.
I always want to learn more. I always want to do more. I always want to say more just because that's how you thrive.
Yes.
Is knowledge is power. And if you're able to convey that, like I told you earlier, you're able to connect with the audience and people will respect you and they will respect what you're doing.
Mhm.
What I would tell a young Wisdom Martin is that same thing is stay focused. Don't give up. It's a journey. And it doesn't matter if somebody else is getting whatever they're getting right now because stay on your path and stay focused on what you're trying to do to get to your goal.
Perfect. Embrace the journey. Persistence is key.
That's right.
That's the message I want to pass
And
to you.
knowledge is power.
I will.
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, sir.
so much.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Always.
Yes.
Always.
Thank you.
Anytime.